Breaking right now, Calamity Lammy strikes again. How much more embarrassment from our foreign secretary on the international stage are we going to have to put up with? The man who, just remember, thinks Marie Antoinette won the Nobel Prize for Science, who thought the BBC were being racist when they spoke about black smoke leaving the chimney during a conclave electing a previous pope. This guy is not only thick, though, he's also a nasty piece of work. He's a nasty piece of work who called Brexiteers Nazis. He's a nasty piece of work who compared Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler. And he is now representing us on the world stage. It was always going to be a disaster, but did anyone think it would be as bad as this? Front page of The Sun today. Foreign Secretary yelled effing French at me, says fair row cab driver. Now, of course, there's a whole load of back and forth about exactly what went on in this French cab. But can I just show you the back seat of this taxi and how Lammy left it in after 6 hours in that car? As Chris Rose pointed out, a sandwich packet, plastic fork, and a discarded coffee cup can all be seen in the photo. This is Starmer's top choice to represent Britain on the world stage. I repeat, he is an embarrassment. He is a champagne socialist, and he was always going to be a shocking choice. Did he assault this taxi driver? Well, of course, the taxi driver says no. And all of the deep state, all of the establishment have come down on the side of David Lammy. And of course, the mainstream media have just dismissed the story, have just decided this isn't a big deal. When you know, if it had been Priti Patel, if she were foreign secretary, the Tory shadow foreign secretary, you just know they would be demanding her resignation. It would be leading the British Bashy News. It would be leading Woke ITV News. It would be leading Sly News. And Patel actually posted on this saying, if these reports are correct, then Calamity Lammy must be honest about the details of his trip, as this is becoming an embarrassing saga for Britain's chief diplomat and for our country. I replied to her saying, if this had been you as a minister, it would have been leading every news bulletin. The PM would have been hounded about it. You would have been doorstepped every morning. You can't hate the MSM and its hypocrisy enough. Lammy is an international embarrassment. Now, Connor Tomlinson of Tomlinson Talks on YouTube, senior contributor to Courage Media, joins me now. Connor, I'm going to go through all of the ins and outs of this story in just one moment. Lammy was, of course, in the taxi with his wife. But can we just look at the macro of this first, right? This guy is shaming us on the international stage on a daily basis, and the mainstream media are just like, nothing to see here.
Yeah, the photo of the backseat of that taxi, Dan. I mean, David Lammy, an inconsiderate slob. Oh, knock me down with a feather. But of course, as you've already pointed out, that I'm no fan of Priti Patel, considering she flooded us with millions of people that she called living bridges to
I'm with you there.
advantage the Modi regime under the Boris wave. However, it is correct that if she had done this, The Guardian would have knocked up another cartoon of her as literally the devil standing at the dispatch box. So we know this is politically ill-motivated. As far as David Lammy goes, I can say on behalf of our allies in the US that they think he's a blithering idiot who isn't worth their time and that they can see through like a terrible bit of tissue paper. So if Keir Starmer were to replace him in a forthcoming cabinet reshuffle, which he thinks he's seen off, I would wager, by this new immigration announcement and the fact that Rachel Reeves has got a slight reputation boost for a 0.7% GDP growth, whoopee. I think that he could replace Lammy at little to no cost. The only thing that you would get is griping by the Labour backbench at his insufficient level of diversity on his front bench. So obviously skin color diversity, not intellectual diversity, because David Lammy hasn't got even two brain cells to rub together. But I think it would be a wise choice for Keir Starmer to do so if he wants to refashion himself as the ruthless pragmatist that Tony Blair is in his ear telling him to be.
The problem is he committed to keeping Lammy in the Foreign Office job for his entire term. But look, let me take you through the details of the story, Connor. It's incredibly sordid. And I also have to question David Lammy's wife. she's an artist. Maybe I'm being stereotypical. Maybe she's a bit airy-fairy. But surely in that situation, the wife steps in and say, don't leave the car in such a mess. Don't get into a row with this taxi driver. Just calm yourself down. But anyway, here's what the Sun has revealed. Foreign Secretary David Lammy shouted effing French twice during a furious row over a taxi fare, the driver has claimed. Nassim Mamoum, 40, said the minister who oversees His Majesty's diplomatic service got aggressive when asked to pay for a 6-hour trip last month from Italy to a ski resort in France. Foreign Secretary David Lammy shouted effing French twice during that row. Now, the Sun has obtained, and we saw this, of course, photos showing the filthy state in which the Ford was allegedly left. And the chauffeur told the Sun when he got out of the vehicle, he said, effing French, I was afraid. He claims Mr. Lammy's £588 fare is still unpaid following last month's trip in the French Alps. Now, Lammy, who was, of course, with his wife, Nicola Green, has said he totally refutes the allegations and insists the fare was paid in full. Now, I would argue, Connor, why on earth he was taking a 6-hour taxi anyway. Surely there would have been lots of other ways that he could have travelled. Even if this driver was potentially attempting to rip him off, is the solution, if you're a diplomat, if you're someone representing Britain on the world stage, isn't the solution to simply say, okay, I'm going to give you the money now. I'll deal with this with the company later. I'll get one of my phalanx of civil servants onto this. It feels so weird that he decided to pick a fight with this guy.
Well, I don't know, swearing at the French. Maybe he is an Englishman after all.
I know, actually, some people are saying this might make him more popular.
He's as British as you and me. As far as his wife wearing the trousers, I mean, if it's David Lammy, she'll have to use it as a duvet, I suppose. As far as it goes with getting alternative modes of transport, look, his justification will be, as a minister in a foreign country, there are security concerns, therefore I need a personal car no matter where I travel. I can't just hop on the bus or the metro. And that would be understandable if, one, he had paid the fare from his own pocket, and two, he had not allegedly treated the driver in this way. The final thing I will note is whether or not this is a trend from other Labour ministers. We've already had, Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves accepting Taylor Swift and Sabrina Carpenter tickets and free clothes and Angela Rayner going on raves in Ibiza when she's meant to be doing much more serious things. It seems to be a very much car and harem syndrome that we saw from the inner Soviet Union, where they're preaching socialist solidarity and the redistribution of wealth, and frankly, the expropriation of all property. If you look at the Marxist grave robbing they're doing on the farmers, while amassing opulence and going to fancy parties and sipping on champagne, they're not practicing what they preach. And so this is an attitude endemic to the Labour Party. And so, I think if you replace David Lammy and break yet another pledge that Keir Starmer has made, and you get someone more sensible and less of a reputation risk in both globally and to your party as Foreign Secretary, you're probably not going to root out that disconnected attitude from the rest of the country, because it seems like every single Labour politician has got far too comfortable to the lavish lifestyle they're living in SW1. Though come the next election, I don't think most of them are going to be living it.
No, I mean, they're ultimate champagne socialists, aren't they? We saw that time and again. And of course, Starmer, in order to get Lady Victoria back on side, had to offer her all of these clothes paid for by Lord Ali. I mean, it was extraordinary just before the election was held. Now, let me go back to what this driver said, though, because he is also indicating there was some abuse and threatening behaviour by Lammy as well. But first, the reason you're watching this show is that it's becoming increasingly difficult to trust mainstream media or the so-called fact-checkers, as we're always talking about, because they claim to determine which facts are true. The good reason we're losing trust. Think about the ongoing debates over free speech or Brexit or Trump or trans issues. But the good news is I've found a solution. It's called Ground News, and it's the best way to stay informed and cut through media bias and manipulative narratives so you can get the facts for yourself. It has been a game changer for a news junkie like me, and you can see for yourself at ground.news/outspoken. I'm going to tell you about an incredible discount opportunity today in just one moment, but first let me show you this incredible website and app in action. So let's use my favorite story of the year. The Supreme Court ruled that women can only be biological adult human females, reversing years of trans extremism. In one place, Ground News puts the 350 sources covering the story. Then they instantly show how the story is being covered by the media, broken down by whether it leans to the left or the right. This is called the bias distribution chart. If you scroll down, you can see every headline about the story, along with the political bias and ownership of the publication. So we can see for ourselves quite clearly that on the right, the Daily Wire covered the case very accurately with the headline, UK Supreme Court rules trans-identifying men are not women. Spiked Online was even more forthright, declaring women exist, get over it. And the Daily Telegraph looked in depth at the disgraced famous faces who declared trans women are women. David Tennant, I'm looking at you. By stark contrast, the left-wing National said the result was only a victory for gender-critical feminists. And the Canary ran with this hilarious headline, victory for the far right, as Supreme Court rolls back trans women's rights by 2 decades. So yep, JK Rowling, she's far right now. Yeah, right, I say. My favourite feature, though, the blind spot feed. This services upwards of 20 stories daily that receive the majority of coverage from one side of the political spectrum. So if you love the news like I do, the blind spot feed is the best way to get a balanced perspective on what's happening. Go to ground.news/outspoken or scan the QR code to subscribe today. Get 40% off the same Vantage plan I use for unlimited access. That's 40% off right now at ground.news/outspoken. But now, back to the show. He told The Sun, at a certain point when I asked him to pay the bill, the difference of €700 he hadn't paid me, I received 2 blows like that. He hit the middle seat. He was behind me. He hit like this, tack, tack, 2 times. When he got out of the vehicle, that's when he said the swear words. And he got out of my car, went around. He made a turn to come towards me. I was afraid. He said he had acted like a thug. Now, why this is significant, Connor, is because Mr. Taxi Driver claims that it was that threatening behavior from Lammy which saw him drive off and go to a police station the next morning. Lammy claims that he had left the luggage in the car. And so as a result, this French taxi driver, who's now been prosecuted, by the way, for theft, had stolen his items. But if Lammy was being threatening to the taxi driver is going to drive off. So it very much is a tit for tat story here.
Well, also, and again, I don't think David Lammy is a champion of reason. If you were going to steal his luggage of a foreign diplomat, why would you drive straight to a police station with said luggage still in the car? Like, sorry, if you'd committed a murder, you wouldn't rock up with a body in the boot, would you? So yeah, I again, it's all alleged. I am inclined to not take David Lammy's account of this word for word. And if he did have this childish outburst of entitlement, it would not surprise me in the least.
What's interesting as well is that Lammy, who's a dirty guy, he's a really dirty guy. He plays dirty. He leaves his card dirty. He's dirty on so many levels. And he is playing dirty here because he is now accusing Mr. Mamoon of threatening his wife by showing a knife. But Mr. Mamoon says that is absolute rubbish, and it was simply a pen poking out from a bundle of receipts in his armrest. He provided the Sun this picture of said pen, and it would be surprising, Connor, wouldn't it, for a diplomatic driver who has all of the correct registration and everything in France to drive foreign dignitaries to have a knife. And so I would argue, although of course this will not be proven until the court case, but I would argue this is Lammy trying desperately to get out of this by throwing every possible accusation at the guy and saying, oh yeah, he had a knife.
Yeah, we don't know the personal trustworthiness of the taxi driver in question,
No.
but we do know that David Lammy has a very difficult relationship to the truth.
Yes. And we do know that this guy at least is professional enough to get one of those licenses, Connor, to drive diplomats, which means you can't, like, this is, I guess the point I'm making, this is not like a bog standard Uber driver who doesn't need to have any form of qualifications or any form of credibility checks.
Yes, and David Lammy was more than happy to say that men can grow a cervix in order to walk the party line and get elected. So I don't think that David Lammy is a bastion of truth and integrity, and therefore I question as to whether or not he really thought that shiny pen was a knife, or if he thought that it was a post hoc rationalization to bolster the credibility of his story with the police to depict himself as a victim when, he threw a bit of a fit when he shouldn't have. So,
well, I'm just going to say it, Connor. I don't believe Lammy. And I'll tell you why. Because not all taxi drivers, I mean, this is why I try and catch black cabs when I'm in London, because we know not all taxi drivers are honourable people, okay? We know that. Taxi drivers can rip people off. But what do we all have, Connor, now? We have mobile phones. And if there's any type of confrontation like this, especially if you're foreign secretary, the first thing you do is you start recording what happened. That is just total common sense. And there is absolutely no claim from Lammy. And let me show you this trip, actually, because it was a very, very long trip. 360-mile journey, by the way, from France to Italy, which I think is utterly ludicrous. The total fare was £1,305. And the suggestion, by the way, is that Lammy was potentially going to double dip in terms of the receipt, because the driver says that he snatched the receipt from his hand without providing the cash. But what I think is also particularly not kind about this is the arrogance in which Lammy and his team are using trying to discredit the driver, is what I'm trying to say. Because listen to what the ally of Mr. Lammy told The Sun. He said, anyone choosing to believe made-up stories and photos from a rogue taxi driver charged with a serious crime by French prosecutors over the UK Foreign Secretary needs to get a grip. So effectively, Connor, we're just meant to believe Lammy because of his job. End of story.
Yeah, if anything, David Lammy's job on his track record makes me much less likely to believe him. But again, look, Labour Party apparatchiks will always deny all wrongdoing. They'll always come out and excuse any bad behaviour or egregious policy inflicted upon the British public when there is no democratic mandate for doing so. And they'll say that it's in our best interest that we actually always promise this. Do not believe the evidence of your own lying eyes. I anticipate that there might be more evidence that comes out about this that makes David Lammy's story look even less credible. For the time being, I won't be declarative in either way, because our enemies can be very litigious, Dan, but I will just say that everything David Lammy's ever done casts his account into doubt.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.